big fear with that was that PayPal was at the end of the year. It was going to be like, yeah, there's $40,000 came through your PayPal. Like,
Oh my God.
none of it was mine. It all came in and then went right back out same night.
What is going on, everybody? Good morning, and welcome to the MLB Strategy Show presented by Prize Picks. I'm Eric Lindquist. We're going to talk through this 9-gamer here over on DraftKings.com. A little bit more limited. I guess they broke up 48 different slates on FanDuel. Kind of seems to be the way that it is. One of the two sites every single time is going to probably do that. Be on the lookout. Earlier lock time on DraftKings. A little bit later there for 7:10 p.m. it would be over on FanDuel. But enough of that. That's semantics. Let's get to my guy over here, Terry McBride at DigitalP21 on the Twitters. We were just talking old school poker days. We were talking, the grind during the pandemic, hanging out with the buddies, the things we had to do in order to have some fun. How you doing, my guy?
Doing good. It's been a wacky morning. I had meltdown in my spreadsheet like halfway through updating it. The whole computer shut off. It's been, just had to redo everything. Just been one of those mornings. I've been sneezing for 2 days after all the rain that came through the East Coast here with my allergies. So yeah, it's been a fun one, but we're here. We're ready to grind. I'm glad that I caught what we were doing 2 different slates on DK and FanDuel. Usually I find out about that like midway through my article and have to redo things again. But yeah, we're here. We're good.
The crisis is over.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. My wife just delivered me my water. I have my coffee. She likes me a lot. That's good to know.
This was formerly a Batman logo. Not so much anymore.
Yeah, dishwashers will do that. Yeah, dishwashers will do that. It's now just a black mug. That's cool.
Yeah, big black mug. Which is good. How was your Mother's Day? Did you guys do anything?
No, it was good. I babysat the dog so my wife and her mom could go out. She has a sister that moved to New York. They were just out there for about a week or so. And so they were able to spend some time out there. So they kind of did some Mother's Day stuff out there, but then, did the card and things, got my mom flowers back in South Dakota. So
very nice.
I'm here in LA living the life. And, it's still cold apparently in the Midwest. What an absurd thing. Weather. I've forgotten what weather is.
Dude, it was like 45 and pouring rain Friday and Saturday all day. It was like it was just cave time. I was just in my cave Friday, Saturday. Went down to mom's yesterday for dinner and got out a little bit. But yeah, lousy kind of weekend.
I will say, though, college was fun when it was miserable outside. And you got to just sit inside and cuddle, and life was good.
Yeah,
life was good. Those are good days. Anyway,
how frequently went to class. You could do that any day, really.
You really could. Nostalgia is always beautiful. But you know what? Life gets better as it goes along. At least we all hope so. We hope so. It would especially get better if somebody could take down a GPP today. Again, today's the day for somebody. I got a feeling, woohoo, that tonight's going to be a good night. So smash that like button, subscribe button, notification bell. All of that goes a very, very long way for both Terry, myself, and Mike. Awesemo behind the camera there, behind the virtual glass, doing everything he can to make sure that this show goes smoothly. We've got 9 games. We're going to cover 9, the DraftKings main slate. A couple of games that are going to be on there that are not on the FanDuel slate. That is Dodgers, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Cincy. You ready to get into it, my friend?
Sounds pretty good to me, man. Let's dive on in.
Let's do it. First game right off the bat, I said Dodgers, Pittsburgh. Nothing like a minus 245 road favorite. That would be what happens when you're the new version of the pinstripes out west. That is the Dodgers, the new evil empire to some, not to me. Go Dodgers. Julio Urias, 20.2% K percentage, 2.47 expected ERA so far. K percentage is not what you typically want, but my God, is he a good real-life pitcher, getting enough pitches in there now, going up against another southpaw, Jose Quintana. Let's start with Urias. How does he stand out on the MLB DraftKings slate?
I think he's at least interesting. We know he's a very good pitcher. We know he's been effective overall for the season. The thing that concerns me is, he's just been pitching really efficiently. So his largest pitch count for the season is still just 81. I don't think that there's any reason to think that he's going to be limited if he needs 100 pitches. I think they're there for him. I think he's totally stretched out. You mentioned the, effectiveness of the K percentage right now sitting at 20.2%. Last year, 26.2% over 185 and 2/3 innings. He's walked a few more hitters this year. The xFIP is up this year. So there are some concerns around the edges, but just going up against this Pirates lineup, I mean, this is a team that anybody can carve up here. So I don't really see any issues. I don't see him as being threatened at all. And I think it's, the right price for this pitcher. The Pirates this season, this active roster, 14% worse than average creating runs against lefties, 113 ISO against lefties. They do have an okay strikeout rate, just 20.6%. So it might be another scenario where he comes out, doesn't strike out the world, but just pitches you a nice clean game, gets you to the win, gets you where you need to be. And I think that's probably enough for 8,200 on the DK slate. So I like him as an option over there. He's not overpriced. So yeah, I think you can get away with him there. If you're playing that FanDuel slate with the 2-gamer, he costs 9,500 there, but I think he's probably a pretty strong go-to considering the matchup.
So I know our friend Neil Orfield, he always talks about all of the crazy amounts of positive leverage that can exist when you have a bunch of 1% owned pitchers, sub 1% owned pitchers. Put Jose Quintana in that bucket. He's going to be a guy at 6,100. There's positive leverage going his direction, 6.7% top 2 pitcher percentage, but my God, picking on the Dodgers feels like a fool's errand from time to time. I don't know any time that it's worked out this season. Maybe it will with like a guy like Carlos Rodon, who's obviously somebody we'll talk about later. But my God, I don't know how I play Jose Quintana today. How about you?
Yeah, no, that's I think the 1% of people that we have projected roster him on DraftKings are going to be very disappointed that they did that. Like you said, if it's Carlos Rodon on the hill, we can have a conversation about it at least. Like I think I rostered some fair shares of him when he's going up against this team, because then you get that scenario where a very, very good pitcher, a premium pitcher who can go through this lineup is under-owned typically. In this scenario, it's Jose Quintana. It's not even a discussion. 20% strikeout rate this year, 9% walk rate. The xFIP is fine, 3.68 xFIP. He puts 1.25 whip is not great, but it's not completely tragic. The hard hit is fine. Everything's around league average, but he's just not a very good pitcher. And this is an amazing lineup. He's not a guy who's going to go out there and strike out a ton of these hitters. They're very good at avoiding the strikeout. So I just don't see anything there for Jose Quintana. If he was 4,000 in this matchup, maybe you could sell me a few shares, but at 61, I just don't think it's there.
Yeah, the Dodgers obliterate righties here on the season. They're third in MLB and WRC plus with a 118, 157 ISO. Against lefties, they are much further down the board than you'd expect. 308 plate appearances, only a 96 WRC plus and 132 ISO. But as you said, this is Jose Quintana. This is also a Dodgers team that is going to, murder everybody this season. So we got to kind of take it with a grain of salt. Just at least something to look out for. I think the Dodgers, with the amount of lefties and then righties who hit righties well, they're going to just be monsters, especially you put Freddie Freeman at the top of that lineup. But then against lefties, that might be the one spot you can find some glimmer of hope. As I said, that would kind of be why Rodon fits the template of somebody that I would utilize against them. They'd be lower owned. I would fire it up in bulk. Probably not going to do that with Quintana here. So let's talk the evil empire out west. The Los Angeles Dodgers here, but they're playing in Pittsburgh, so that's a moot point. How do you feel about this lineup? Who are some of your favorites to get to if you're going to stack them up?
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty easy lineup to get to in terms of which players I want, because I can play this lineup pretty much 1 through 9. They've got talent top to bottom. You've got a ton of cost. You've got a ton of ownership on the top end hitters. The Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman's, Trey Turners of the world. Justin Turner pulling 11.9% underpriced at 4,200 on the DraftKings slate. And then everybody below him in the single digits. So I end up on the back end of this lineup a fair amount of the time. And the 4 through 7 type of approach, the 4 through 8 type of approach. I think even, Austin Barnes, if he's catching, or Will Smith, depending on who's in there catching, Gavin Lux at the back of the lineup has power, has speed. So I do think this team, depending on the batting order that comes out, can be stacked basically 1 through 9, particularly against this pitcher. You did mention they've struggled so far this year in the overall numbers, but this year's active roster using last year's stats, 4th in baseball with a 19.9% strikeout rate against lefties, 4th in baseball with a 194 ISO against lefties, and they created runs runs 11% better than average, which was 8th in baseball. So this is a team that knows how to hit lefty pitching, despite, some small sample early on in the season. I'm not worried about the Dodgers going forward against lefties, and this is a lefty that they're going to get right against pretty quickly here, I think. So yeah, top to bottom, this Dodgers lineup, put it together any way that you can, offset the popularity and the cost with some other cheap bats on the top end, guys.
Yeah, Turner, 237 batting average, 263 for Mookie, Chris Taylor, 250, Justin Turner, 172. All these righties. I think positive regression's coming. It would be insane if we ended the season and that was what they ended up batting on the season, let alone their ISO. 103 for Trey Turner, 190 for Mookie, so it's still existent, 179 for Freddie Freeman, lefty though, 138 Chris Taylor, 0.069 Justin Turner. I expect good things on the horizon for these righties. Why not? Up against Quintana, 4.6 implied run total. That is the tops on the slate. And they're a little bit lower owned than Miami, which, oh boy, that'll be a fun conversation. That game is the only one on the slate that really stands out. So it's one game that kind of stands out. And then you get these teams like the Dodgers that are just going to stick out because, of course, they do. Pittsburgh, I have really nothing. I will always take some Vogelbach against a righty, but as I understand, Julio Urias isn't switching hands to pitch today.
No, last I checked, he's still going to be coming with the left hand. So, could I maybe sell you some Michael Chavis in there? Maybe some Brian Hayes, Brian.
He's
Reynolds,
your boy, Michael Chavis. You could have a share of him.
I do like that Michael Chavis.
You're allowed to play one share of him. That's all.
I'll take it. So far this season, 243, 267, 429, a 186 ISO, 3 home runs, getting a lot of his work done against lefty pitching with Chavis. So maybe you're looking at like a 3-man with Brian Hayes, Brian Reynolds, Chavis, or maybe Yoshi Tsutsugo in there. But it's not a team to get over the top with, particularly against a guy who, again, even if he's not striking out a ton of these hitters, is most likely going to be efficient, get through this lineup a few times, get his outs, and get out of the game. So not really looking at the Pirates here.
Yeah, Brian Hayes, I also expect positive regression for him. His ISO's under 1 at the moment. Not ideal when you give somebody a bucket of money and then they don't hit anymore. Sounds like,
to be fair, still creating runs 39% better than average despite the lack of power.
Walking.
408 on base. Like, you're not going to criticize that kid that from a leadoff hitter. Like, he's still getting you the correlated scoring, but yeah, you definitely need him to come around with the power bat and deliver as expected. Everything else is there except for the power right now. So we'll see where that ends up. But I agree. I think there's more to see with him.
One Dodger bat to rule them all, one Dodger bat to find them.
Let's see who's got the top home run rate on the board here. Looks like Mr. Muncy. Even a lefty here, 10.48 in my home run model. Both leaders in the home run model, lefties. Freddie Freeman's the second one. So
See,
I'll
that's
take
fun.
Mr. Muncy at lower ownership, lower cost.
Stack up those two lefties, coming off of the primetime game yesterday. It's just incredible. Gavin Lux starting to come alive. It's a scary, scary baseball team. Let's keep it on going. Milwaukee minus 165 at Cincinnati. This is the other early game that's DraftKings only. And then we will touch on the FanDuel slate here, the 7-gamer that they have going. But on the bump, we get our guy, Brandon Woodruff. He's still good, 29.8% K percentage this season, 1.19 whip. It just comes down to, how can I possibly get him and Rodon together in these DraftKings lineups, 9,310K? I think you end up on a lot of the same stacks other people might. I definitely wouldn't play both of them and then fire up some Miami in my life. That's going to be the chalk type build here today. So I want to be aware of that. But how do you feel about Woodruff when you have to compare him to the likes of Rodon going up against the Rockies out of Coors Field?
I agree with our top stacks in terms of I would have Rodon above him against the Rockies. I just think that the talent is a little bit stronger for Rodon when he's going right with that lefty arm. So a slight favor to Rodon, but you gotta love Woodruff going up against baseball's worst lineup here. The Reds have just been completely terrible all season long. Woodruff pushing a 30% strikeout rate over 5 starts, 24 1/3 innings, 7.7% walks, 3.27 xFIP. You've got to like basically everything that Woodruff's done. A little bit of premium contact, 39.7% hard hit with a 9.5% barrel rate in there. So he'll come back to earth on that a little bit. Last year, he was 32.4% hard hit with a 5.8% barrel. That's more what I expect from Woodruff, but I'm not even worried. Even if he makes a few mistakes against this team, there's just not that many hitters that are going to really take advantage, really threaten him here. Plenty of strikeouts available for him. So I like the spot for Woodruff here. The ownership, the cost is definitely difficult to deal with. I agree. It's going to be impossible to put him together with Rodon and get to anything really relevant. And what you have to look for when you're doing that is, like you said, you don't want to go hand in hand into the exact same value stack that everybody who does that is doing. But then you start looking around and now you're at the bottom of lineups. You're really putting together some really thin needles to thread. So I just like getting away from those scenarios where I'm using good hitters. I'm using good lineups. I don't love going to the bottom of a bad team's lineup just for cost, just to offset some ownership. And you're grabbing these, quad A type players. I like going to guys that are low owned at the heart of the lineup, guys who I think are good hitters. And when you don't have a lot of them available for value on the slate, it becomes very difficult to combine those top end pitchers. But I think you do have a lot of good spots that you can jump to offset that. So there's a good amount of pitching available on this slate.
Thomas Ramon, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I don't know if you noticed, the Dodgers are pretty good. And all those, I mean, it's just a weird thing to say. What a weird thing to say. They're very good top to bottom. I don't know what planet you're on, but I will say Terry McBride does put some nice flair on the Spanish. That's the Puerto Rican in you, correct?
Yeah, Cuban.
See, I flip-flopped it in my brain. God, I hate God. Just give me the answer. It's fine. Screwed it up. It's fine.
I think you got that same one mixed up last week, but it's okay.
I know.
Islands, the real close.
See, I thought it was the other way around, and then I flipped it in my head again right before I pulled the trigger. I will get it right before the end of the year, at least one time. I promise you.
So I'm just curious: are in Thomas Ramon's comment, are we the okay white dudes acting like the lineup is good, or is the lineup filled with okay white dudes that he doesn't?
The lineup's filled with okay white dudes is the way that I think it comes across.
Okay, so are we okay white dudes too, or are we like below grade like white dudes, or are we above grade?
I'll take average. I'm in LA 7.
Okay, so we're average white dudes talking about average white dudes. All right.
Yeah.
The Dodgers are really good, man. That's like the NL All-Star team. There's a reason that their salaries are so high because they're some of the best players in baseball combined.
They have a guy who won MVP 2 years ago. They have a guy who won MVP two years ago who's on the shortest contract, 1 year, 17 mil, and he's batting 7th or 8th in every single lineup.
I think there's 3 former MVPs in that lineup, right?
Yeah.
At least. Yeah.
Trey Turner. Well, I mean, Trey Turner, did he win MVP?
No,
I don't think so. But Trey Turner obviously was like height of his baseball last season as well, was playing MVP caliber baseball. So it's like, I don't even know what to say. It's a lineup. He's been the number 1 pick in year long for how many years in a row?
Yeah.
It was like 3 years, not this year, but like 3 or 4 years in a row. He was the number 1 pick because of stolen base upside.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're getting home runs. You're getting stolen bases, 28-32 last year. I mean, you could just go down this lineup. They're absurdly good. The average WRC plus for this lineup, for the projected lineup, even with a clunker of a 41 WRC plus from Justin Turner in the cleanup spot, the average of the entire projected 9-man lineup is 17% above average creating runs. If we take Justin Turner out of that, that becomes 127. That becomes 27% better than average creating runs for this season so far without Justin Turner's clunker in there. So, I mean, this team is absurdly good. That comment is ridiculous.
That's okay. We're going to move on. Hope it's a good day.
No. I'm spending the rest of the show proving to this guy that these Dodgers are good.
I'm just confused. I honestly, there's not even logic, and now run-on sentences are taking place. So we're gonna move on. LA 7.5 at Eric from Kyle B23. I don't understand that, but yes, 7.5 implied total in that game. I find it likely the Dodgers might score all of them, but we'll find out. Let's talk about the wild card, I think, on this slate, and I'm very curious to get your opinion on Luis Castillo, a guy that I think pretty much the entire DFS industry has always liked. He's always shown flashes. In 2020, 30.5% K percentage, but then it came down to 23.9% over a much larger sample last season. He stayed healthier, and part of that is little downtick in velocity. 3.63 expected ERA, though, was a really good real-life pitcher still. Walk rate, it's all right, 9.3% during that sample size, but this will be his season debut. He just got done pitching in AAA Louisville. I believe he almost put up upper 70s pitches. Let me find the exact number. I saw it earlier today. How many did he go? 76? I think
76.
Yeah, okay, there it is.
7 or something like that.
I just know that he was in AAA Louisville and that he had started that last one. I think that puts him in play for 80 against Milwaukee, who I think in this ballpark is always going to garner some type of attention, especially because Cincinnati's not good in facing Brandon Woodruff on the other side. But if Luis Castillo gets 80, 85 pitches against anybody, especially a Milwaukee team that has strikeouts in the lineup and might be popular, I want to get to Luis Castillo. Talk me through your process in breaking him down today.
I love Luis Castillo as a pitcher in general. He's been on my dynasty team that I talk about all the time for several years now. If you're looking back, he did have back at the beginning of his career, he was 27.3% strikeout rate over 89 and a third back in 2017. So he did hit a high one, went down, came back up for 2 years. He was 28.9% in 2019, 30.5% in 2020. Then, like you said, dipped to 23.9% last year. The walks went back up by a little bit. I think he's going to come out and have a fine season for us. I have no reason to believe that he's not going to. I'm not sure how much I would go to him today. There is that concern around the pitch count. If that 80 becomes 70, 75, if they just say, hey, higher stress level at the major league level, let's give them a little time. There's absolutely no reason. We're the Reds and we're the worst team in baseball. There's no reason for us to push one of our remaining prized assets, whether that's for trade, whether that's for building, we'll see. But there's no real reason for them to push him in this spot. And it is a matchup against the Brewers, who they do have an aggressively bad strikeout rate, 24.2% so far this year against righties. That's 20th in baseball, but they're 4th in baseball with a 177 team ISO in the split. They've created runs 11% better than average, 5th ranked 3.33 home run rate so far this season against righties. So there are some concerns there around the Brewers' quality in terms of hitting the ball over the fence, maybe stringing together some sequential hits, putting together some runs. Castillo, for all his quality, has always struggled a little bit with the walks. It's always a little bit higher than you'd want. Few too many guys on base through most starts. He tends to get through it. He tends to pitch his way out of trouble. I just question that in the first start of the year. What's the efficiency going to look like? What's his ability to do that at the major league level going to look like? So he's actually still on the injured list in my the dynasty team is weekly. So I left him on the IL to keep I forget who it was this week. So I'm losing those 2 starts, one against the Pirates at the end of the week, but I was a little concerned about what he would be giving us here. I think he's fine to take some shots on 8,800 on DK, 3% owned. You can go to 10%, not really damage too much of your lineups and roll the dice with him. And I think he's worth that. But I don't know how much further than that I would go.
That's what I'm going to be paying attention to between now and live before lock. I'll be on that with Neil, breaking everything down. That'll be 4:30 until 5:30, right before the NBA Deeper Dive, NBA Live before lock. So we'll be able to break those down. Then lock will be an hour after that show gets over. But I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to that ownership, because if it starts creeping up to 8, 9, 10%, I really have no interest. But if it's going to be 3% and that's going to maintain, even in this ballpark, we've seen Castillo be very, very successful. I think he's a guy I definitely want to take some shots on. But as I was saying before, Milwaukee is going to be a team that has to be getting some attention. You get Great American Ballpark and positive leverage. Yes, it's a good pitcher, but we don't know entirely what to expect. It's his first start of the season. Maybe it gets out of the gate slow, and you want to be there. 6.7% ownership share, 8.3% top stack potential. That's 3rd best on the slate. How do we break down Milwaukee and what we want to do with them today?
Yeah, I'd be looking to stack some Brewers here for sure. I think you can get to some decent offsets of ownership in the middle of the lineup. Guys like Rowdy Tellez, only 7.4% owned at 4,700. I think the price is actually fairly low for what we've gotten from Rowdy so far this season, and the ownership's definitely low. Hunter Renfroe right behind him in the 6th spot in the projected lineup, 2.7% owned, 4,500. That's easy to get to. I think Omar Narvaez is viable if you need a catcher, if you're playing on DK. So I would go to those guys, and then, yeah, you can build in anybody from the top of the lineup alongside those guys. They're all at least affordable for their talents. They're all relatively low owned. So I think the Brewers combine fairly well here. And you're going up against Castillo. Even if you get Castillo going to 80 pitches, you're still going to get 4 innings against the bullpen. And this is not a good bullpen. So even if the Brewers are trailing, 2-0, and Castillo's got 6 strikeouts in the 5th inning, he comes out of the game, I still like the Brewers in the over on that one, just going up against this bullpen. So I think you can take shots up and down the lineup. I don't love Lorenzo Cain or Jace Peterson at the back end of the lineup, but if you need a super salary offset type of a guy, you can always plug one of those guys in positionally and salary wise. But for me, it's about the top 7.
I semi-recommended playing Cain in a lineup once upon a time, and I will never do it again. I can't do that. I can't vouch for such things. I was like, well, he's the cheap guy who makes your Milwaukee stack work. And I think Milwaukee put up 18 runs and he had like 3 fantasy points, I think. But anyway, Rowdy Tellez, 784 expected slugging. What in God's green earth? Wow. This is just incredible. The guy's out of his mind. He showed power. He showed pop in Toronto, just had a lot of the strikeouts. Now that's muted, 22.8%. Good times if you're a Milwaukee Brewers fan. You revamped Christian Yelich in such a meaningful way to MVP status. And now you've done the same thing with Rowdy Tellez and Willy Adames. Good times. Let's talk. Yeah, let's talk. Oh, go ahead.
Just before we move on to Cincy, which I don't know that we'll have to spend all that much time on. Yeah. Let's not jump off the Christian Yelich bandwagon, or it's time to jump back on it. I think the turnaround's coming. Oh, yeah. It's starting to trickle in around the edges. 23% better than average creating runs so far this season. 248, 339, 436. That's not the triple slash we're looking for from him, but it's better than where he was. I think the ISO's coming back a little bit. The ISO's up at 188 right now. Last year for the 475 plate appearances, the ISO was at 125. He's hit 4 home runs. He hit 9 all of last year. So I think the Christian Yelich turnaround's coming.
So fun story quick. So one of my best friends out here, his childhood best friend is Christian Yelich. And so we've gotten to do some cool stuff and go to games and gotten to spend some time with him here and there, like whatever else at Dodger Stadium. But I was driving back from Arizona. I visited my parents who were out there on the winter. And as I was driving back through, I ended up at a gas station and Christian was on his way to Arizona. So we ended up running into each other like on the in-between. I was like, oh, we got to send a picture to my buddy. And I was like, how's your back? He goes, oh, great. Best it's felt in a long time. I was like,
there we go. All right. Inside
info. Went up my draft board. So that was fun. You know, when you can have random happenstance. I don't have him on speed dial or anything, but we're familiar with one another. So good to know that he's healthy. Good to know that swinging a bat where 58.7% hard hit percentage is it would be by far the highest mark of his career. Of course, we want to add some launch angle to it, but guess what? 8.8 degrees. It keeps on rising. Yep. He's hearing the right things. I think the right things are starting to be incorporated into his approach. So definitely a guy that I'm going to be rostering a lot more than I did last season when it was like into the ground constantly. What, a 2.8 degree launch angle all of last season. Doesn't matter how hard you hit a baseball, not going to be ideal there. Plus, walks are great, but in DFS, I want guys up at the plate swinging, and only 11% walk rate, kind of encouraging for me. It's kind of strange that it works that way sometimes, because I don't think he's going to be running the base pass as much as he did in the past.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be getting those points from him. So we do want to get some of those power points back. I think that's going to be his role in this lineup, and that's where we need him. And you got to love the monster hard hit numbers. Even through the struggles last year, was still a 48.4% hard hit. It was just like you mentioned, everything was getting hit really hard directly into the ground, and that was just absolutely murdering him. So seeing the launch angle climb back up, seeing the advanced hard hit is really encouraging with him.
Now we've seen some Brandon Woodruffs. Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. He's had 2 horrendous outings amongst 1 average one and 2 amazing outings. That was against Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. I'm going to say Cincinnati again, back-to-back outings against them, probably a good thing. But this one in Great American Ballpark as opposed to Milwaukee, not that Milwaukee in May isn't one of the best hitting parks, because it is. But this is Great American in Cincinnati here, and there might be some Naquin interest, but I really don't have anything. If you want to get some stacks against one of the most popular pitchers, be my guest, but I'm not going to be getting carried away. Naquin's all I got. What do you got?
I don't even know that I'd go all that far. I mean, if I'm getting anybody, it would probably be one-offs of those lefties. Maybe I'm going Naquin. Maybe I'm going Moose for cheap. If you want to get really creative about it, maybe Colin Moran, but it's not a great spot. We could be attacking a good chunk of ownership, but it's just such a bad lineup. It's a lineup that is dead last in baseball in the split and strikeout rate with a 25.7%. Woodruff struck out 12 of these guys in that last start that you just mentioned, and that was 12 strikeouts in 5 2/3 innings. He was just tearing through these guys. The lineup collectively has created runs 17% worse than average against righties this season. Middling home run rate, middling power. There's just really not much threat here. So I can skip them completely. If you're playing that 2-gamer on FanDuel, maybe you do need some of these bats. So maybe you are looking at some of those lefties, but I just don't really like this team at all.
All right. Moving on from this one, we got to talk about the Luka promo, y'all, because this is your last day to take advantage of it. $7 for a full 7 days of Awesemo Plus Platinum. I mean, come on, 77% off our usual weekly price. That is just $7, and it will give you everything that we have behind the paywall, not just the MLB stuff that you know and love, but we have NBA. The boom bust tool is still a huge part of the process if you're going to be taking advantage of those massive contests that are still existing for these 2-game NBA slates. Plus, they're about to be gone very soon. It's going to be showdown season before you know it. So take advantage of this promo and utilize it for NBA streets, but also F1 from yesterday, USFL from this weekend, tennis, soccer, esports, everything you could possibly want. If there are contests on DraftKings or FanDuel we are going to have content available to you in order to help you take those down. So take advantage of this promo code. That is Luca at checkout for $7 of Awesemo Plus Platinum for 1 week. Stop guessing, start winning, and join us here at Awesemo Plus today. Let's keep it going to the FanDuel. I know Terry's a blue site guy, so it's time. His slate has arrived. And obviously, DraftKings, we keep on rolling. Oakland, 3.4 implied runs. Detroit, 3.6. Low totals that we have here, implied run totals. I'm curious about Paul Blackburn, what you see in him, because 25% K percentage, 2.89 expected ERA, and a sub-1 whip. He's pitching good. And I was kind of surprised to see him middle of the road on the top pitchers tool. There's a ton of positive leverage to roster him. It's a Detroit team that has so many strikeouts and so many righties. I think Paul Blackburn is going overlooked at 7,500 on DraftKings. How do you feel about him on FanDuel and DraftKings respectively?
Paul Blackburn is your Paul Blackburn of the night tonight.
What?
You don't remember that bit from 2 years ago or so? He came out, he had like some monster performance and it became the thing for the rest of the season.
That's beautiful. So that's beautiful. I was not quite back. Here. I was not quite here.
I think I was an audience member for those at that time too. So,
that's pretty fun. Who's today's Paul Blackburn of the night? It's like, who has had a massive fantasy performance out of the middle of nowhere? It's like the complete game shutout. Zach Plesac. Who's tonight's Zach Plesac? He's literally on the slate, so that's why it makes sense. He had like 45 at one point.
Of the night tonight is Paul Blackburn. The Paul Blackburn of the night tonight is Zach Plesac. I think we
perfect. Talk to me about Blackburn specifically.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, 25% strikeout rates, over 38 and a third last year, 14.9% strikeout rate. This year, 2.47 xFIP in 24 and a third. Last year, 4.55. This year, 0.95 whip. Last year, 1.62. He's different so far this year. I was looking at it. He started throwing his curveball again a little bit more. He took it from 12% use last year, bounced it up to 17%. Cut his cutter use a little bit. The curve's been effective for him. I don't want to say that this has made all the difference for him. I think it might just be he's giving hitters a little bit of a different look. The stuff is not great. I expect the league will catch back up once the book adjusts. Maybe that happens as soon as tonight. Maybe it happens as soon as against this semi-quality Tigers lineup that has just underperformed terribly against both hands so far this season. Tigers dead last in baseball against righties, 72 WRC plus. Dead last in baseball against righties with a 0.085 ISO, 24th with a 25.3% strikeout rate, dead last with a 1.35% home run rate for this Tigers team. Bad lineup so far, but I believe that they're better than they've been. And I do think they can get to a righty like Paul Blackburn. So I have tepid interest in Blackburn, particularly. I mean, the price is right. The ownership is fine. Like, I think you can take tournament dart throw shots on him here. I do think there's enough upside. I do think since he's been pitching well that he can get through this lineup based on those numbers cleanly a few times, find a few strikeouts. And at 1% ownership, 2.1% ownership on DK, 7,500, 8,600. I think you're fine taking some shots. I don't love that FanDuel price. I'd rather take those shots on DK. I will definitely have some Tiger stacks coming back the other way as insurance if I'm doing that, though.
I mean, it's weird because I don't think he's ever really had that many innings pitched in the bigs. I mean, I don't remember him being a starter. I mean, he's got to be a bullpen arm for a majority of his career, if not his entire career. And now we're going to see a larger sample and see if he can kind of maintain this, because this K rate has just jumped and come out of nowhere. 14.4% for his career. And generally out of the pen, guys are going to have the capability to just flame throw. He's not one of those guys. He throws at low 90s. The curveball seems to be doing some okay things. Changeup, cutter, slider. Nothing really impresses me there. I don't know where these swings and misses are really coming from. But against Detroit, I'm kind of willing to find out at, nominal ownership. So I think that's what it comes down to. SP2 candidate.
Yeah, the cost of the ownership is the thing, and the opposing lineup. But to your point, and it's not actually a bullpen thing. He's been a starter in the majors through all his career for all his performances. He's just a quad A type pitcher. If you open up his minor leagues in there, every single year that he's got any major league run, he's got more minor league run. Like looking at 2019, he threw 11 innings in the show. He threw 132 and 2/3 in AAA. That's he was 25, 26 then. Even 2021 last year, 38 and a third in the show, 88 and 2/3 in the AAA as a 25-year-old. So, I mean, he's just a quad A type pitcher. This is just who he is. And even in those minor league stints, he's still only striking out 17, 18% of hitters. So this is just out of nowhere, this strikeout rate. So I really do think it's based on just that little change with the pitch mix, and it'll catch back up to him really quick. But I do think he's worth taking those shots with against this Tigers team here for DFS tonight.
Yeah. And now to today's insult of the day. Oakland only has a 3.4 implied total going up against Michael Pineda. Michael Pineda, sorry, guy, you're no good anymore. 597 expected slugging, 318 WOBA, actual WOBA, but a 398 expected WOBA, 51.1% hard hit percentage. He's just giving up contact. He's not missing bats, just a 14% K percentage, no swings and misses, no movement on fastball, 90s fastball. It's topping out at. He's got nothing in Oakland. That just tells you how bad their lineup is. But if they're going to be a little bit overowned, I get why we don't want to go crazy with them. But in terms of value, I prefer Oakland over Arizona and Miami, who I expect to have way more ownership. So maybe I do take some Oakland shots up against Pineda. I mean, we're not looking to roster Pineda, are we?
Oh, I can't imagine.
So let's just jump on over to the Oakland
field
bats.
on DK is though.
What was that?
Apparently 17% of the field is going there on DK at 6,200.
Yeah, no, 17% of the field is high. They woke up and smoked a blunt or something.
Yeah, I wish I was
don't
that
get
kind of
this.
high. That is that's a little wacky. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no
what the field
thanks.
is seeing there. I mean, it is a day of a lot of more expensive pitchers, and you know, it's not extremely high, but there's a lot of guys in the 9s, the mid 8s. But if you're looking, like, I'd rather go to Austin Gomber at 66 against San Francisco. I'd rather go to, but I mean, Paul Blackburn on the other side of this one. I don't think I'd rather go to Quintana, but I'd probably rather take shots with Chris Flexen against Philly. Like, I just do not believe in Mikey Pineda at this point.
Yeah, I'll roster anybody
high on our board, to be honest.
Yeah, he's way too high for me.
Yeah.
10.7% top 2 pitcher percentage. Ownership 17.1%. So he's negatively leveraged as it is. So that would be an automatic write-off. I would just play 0 of him today.
Yeah, and throwing 60% straight line, 90 mile an hour fastball, 20% straight line, 85 mile an hour change. It's just not effective. Fastball spin rate, he's in the bottom 1 percentile of fastball spin rate. He's in the bottom 8 percentile of strikeout rate for the season, 8 percentile of hard hit percentage allowed. He's just not good. Yeah, this is not a spot to roster that pitcher. And I agree. I would throw some A's bats at him. Underrated value stack here. They're cheap. They're low owned. Ramon Laureano back at the top of the lineup there. Nice little bump to the top of the lineup. He's getting some attention. Everybody else is in the single digits, so you can easily stack them.
Yep, we're going to do that. Sean Murphy in favorite bat generally is catcher position. He's expensive, but he should be because he's the only major league quality hitter in that lineup at this point in time. Seth Brown's all right.
I was going to say I'll take some Seth Brown shares there.
Chad Pinder's had some pop, but generally against lefties. But against Michael Pineda, I think it's free to fire up anything you want. Oh, my mouse just died. That's fantastic.
Oh,
let's talk Detroit here. We're going to be doing the lefty tab thing on the old laptop the rest of the show.
Hey, sorry, before we go on, so you can figure out your mouse thing. I'm not a batting average guy, but I just had to average this column out because the average batting average for the projected starting lineup for the A's is 178.
Is that good?
Ridiculous. If we take out Ramon Laureano 0.00, because that's not really fair over 4 plate appearances, it goes up to 201. This is not a good baseball team, but I do think that this is the right spot to roster them if you're going to do it.
Yeah, so Paul Blackburn, I'm giving a little bit of, he's just been a good pitcher this season. He hasn't been historically through his career. You call him a quad A guy, but against the Tigers and their 2 WRC plus you labeled, Spencer Torkelson, 34.1% K percentage, Miguel Cabrera, nearly 30%, Baez down to a 24.7% K percentage because, that's just who he is. A lot of strikeouts to be had here. If you get Tucker Barnhart catching, that's a 39% K percentage. And Robbie Grossman's been leading off a lot. Switch hitter at the top, 29.6% K percentage. A lot of guys, again, Paul Blackburn, I look at this lineup, I don't see a whole lot of danger for him. It really comes down to, can he pitch long enough to be viable on this kind of a slate? I'm willing to find out, but any Detroit Tigers interest with their 3.6 implied run total?
I will definitely take some shares of the Tigers. I think they're pretty low owned here. There's a lot of cheap bats that I do think are pretty talented through that lineup. and they're not getting a ton of ownership attention, particularly on the DK slate. Every single hitter in that lineup under the 5.2% that Javi's drawing. Everybody else is lower than that. On FanDuel, they're a little bit more highly owned because they're a little bit more affordable. Top three hitters, 2,600, 3,200, 2,800 versus on DK, 46, 49, 44. So you're getting a little bit more ownership on those top three, but you can get to the back end of this lineup fairly easily. I do like Akil Baddoo. I do like Spencer Torkelson. I think you can get a little bit out of Heimer Candelario. I think you can get plenty out of Miggy Cabrera still for only 2,300 hitting cleanup in this lineup. So I will have some stacks there. They were very good throughout the after May 7th or whatever it is last year. There were 7 games over 500. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, call it 6, 7 guys in the projected starting lineup who were well over average creating runs last year. So I do like getting to some stacks, especially if I'm going to have some Blackburn shares. I'll want to draw some shares of the Tigers against them. Downgrade to the lineup if there's no Austin Meadows. He's been sick over the weekend, missed a few games. I would want that lefty bat in there if I'm going to it. I would get aggressive about him if he's in that lineup.
Red Skittles, you're an idiot. I'm playing Pineda and fading Tyus Jones. You're an idiot. Cleveland Guardians, the Guardians of the Galaxy, 3.2 implied run total at Chicago White Sox, 4.3 here. What was that, Terry?
I was just saying that's one way to go. Red Skittles. Normally better comments from Red Skittles than that.
You're allowed. Here's what I prefer you do. Take that money, give it to charity. Just do it for all of us involved because you're not winning anything. And you're just going to
find somebody outside like who looks hungry and give it to them, like rather than some charity. Just give it to their CEO or whatever.
Smart guy, Terry McBride at Digital B21. Go follow him for life advice and for everything else because he's correct. Plesac on the mound here for Cleveland. I referenced him again because last season he had a complete game shutout, I believe out of the middle of nowhere, and ruined a slate that was really unfun, but whatever. 13.9% K percentage. He's not very good at this point in time. The White Sox, they're going to be a team I get to. Any Plesac interest, or are you going to be White Sox heavy like me?
Yeah, it's all White Sox on that matchup. I don't need any shares of Plesac. You mentioned the strikeouts. I'll go to the xFIP is 4.57 this year. Last year it was 4.77. Gives up a ton of contact. 47.3% hard hit this year. 43.1 last year. 11% barrel rate within that this year. Net last year was a 9.4. So these are bad numbers, and they're not really going to get all that much better as the season goes on. Just kind of who this guy is. I'm happy to throw some White Sox bats at him here. They're drawing some ownership. They're drawing a lot more ownership on FanDuel because, again, everybody's cheap over there. So they're difficult to roster on the FanDuel slate. They're a lot easier to get to, a lot of single-digit ownership for reasonable prices on DK. Honestly, only Timmy Anderson is over 5,000 at 53. You get Joan Moncada back in this lineup at only 3,900 on DK. That's a nice little bargain, particularly if he's hitting second where he is in the projected. For everybody 4,900 and below from Jose Abreu down. So there's some nice prices in that lineup. I like that a lot.
AJ Pollock, if he's in the lineup, who doesn't play for the Dodgers anymore, Chicago White Sox. Good times.
Correct.
Just having fun. We're having fun. Thomas also said that we're nice white guys. So that's cool.
We're just bringing.
We're okay. We're okay. We're okay. I'm okay being okay. You know who's better than okay? Michael Kopech is better than okay. 207 expected batting average, 25.3% K percentage. For me, this just comes down to Rodon exists, Brandon Woodruff exists. I think those two guys I'm definitely going to like more straight up, but huge difference. 7.8% ownership here for Michael Kopech. 15.3% top two pitcher percentage on DK. And on FanDuel, if anything happens to Rodon, or you have any kind of a situation where they don't quite get there the way that other pitchers do, and you don't have Brandon Woodruff on the FanDuel slate,
much thinner pitching slate,
Kopech becomes really interesting as a primary pitcher there for 1,900 less than Rodon. That might be the guy that I rely on for FanDuel purposes a little bit more if the field isn't going to be there and they're going to just jam Rodon, which I'm going to have lots of, but let's be serious. 45.4% ownership on a 9-game slate or 7-game slate for FanDuel is a very meaningful thing. How do you feel about Kopech as a FanDuel pitcher today, Terry?
I love that spot. I actually don't understand why he's so low owned and why he's a positively leveraged play from where he is. It's a much, much thinner pitching board on the FanDuel slate. I do like Syndergaard on this slate, but for 200 more at positive leverage, I think I'm going to go to Kopech most of the time against this Cleveland lineup. I think that, Eliza Hernandez at 6,900 in positive leverage going up against Arizona is super interesting. So I'm going to get a lot of shares into Kopech, into Eliza, and I love Carlos Rodon. I love the matchup for him. Everything about Carlos Rodon on this slate is great. At 11-1 and 45% popularity on that FanDuel slate, negative 31 leverage score. I'm going to have to look to get under the field on that, I think. So there are slates where I'm willing to eat that chalk. Maybe I get around the field's number, but I'm definitely going to be looking to put shares into some of these positively leveraged pitchers. I can probably even take some shares of Austin Gomber on the other side of that Colorado at San Francisco game. He's positively leveraged. I don't like a lot of the pitching on this slate, so I'm going to be taking out a lot of where I can find those positive leverage scores. And I think Kopech's the right guy to do it with. Tremendous strikeout pitcher, 25.3% strikeout so far. He's walked 12.1%, which could be problematic, but he's kept the whip down in general, 1.04 whip, 9.9% swinging strike rate. I think that'll go up as he continues. 5.4% barrel rate within the 41.1% hard hit that he's allowed. So he's put a few too many guys on base, allowed a little bit too much hard hit, but I think the strikeout upside's there for him. And it's just a pitcher that I really like and I believe in on a day where I don't think we've got a lot of that on the FanDuel slate. The concern is Cleveland, 18% strikeout rate against right-handed pitching so far this year is best in baseball. So that's a little bit concerning. They've been good against righties, fourth ranked ISO, first in creating runs, 39% better than average. So you do run into some challenges there, but I think he's got the talent to get through them, pitch you a clean game and give you enough value, particularly if Rodon gets not even lit up, just dinged. If Rodon gets dinged and doesn't find a ton of strikeouts, there's a lot of guys who can close that gap based on the salary and the ownership very quickly.
Yeah, you get Naylor in there against righties, 11.9% K percentage. Stop looking at me, Quan. 9.9% K percentage there for him. A lot of issues in terms of trying to generate some of those strikeouts, but really good real life pitcher, quality start bonus, 1,900 less than Rodon. I'm going to find some paths to him on FanDuel. That is for damn sure. And on DraftKings, decent enough SP1. And you can kind of go from there and try to get some more bats in there than you would have with Rodon. But Rodon at 10K is just so easy to get to. I think that it'll be tough to really make the case against it. 11-1 on FanDuel. Props to them for making an aggressive price on a starter. Actually, it feels like we've been able to get some 10K Scherzer, 10-6 Scherzer, and that's less fun. This is a pretty enjoyable slate.
When they take all the bats and price all the bats down and still make it easy to combine them with whoever the hell you want.
Yeah, I know.
Does the price bump on the pitcher even matter at that point?
Yeah, I know. I mean, Acuna's been 40,000% owned on like 94 different slates here recently. Yeah. Yep. That might have been hyperbole.
Out of my lineups lately in sorting and putting everything through FC. If there's a one-off, he's filling that spot. And deservedly so. I mean, he's ridiculous. One of the best players in baseball. Been on base all 9 of the games he's been back for.
Just absurd.
He's insane.
Anything else from this game for you?
Would you roster any Guardians shares here? They're pretty low owned. They're affordable.
Jose Ramirez is so damn expensive on DK. He's 6,200. And if that was, he's the one bat I want, the one bat everybody would really want. I think, guys like Quan, there's just not a lot of popularity going to Kopech. So there's not really a whole lot of leverage to create. I think I'm just more inclined to go overweight on Kopech and then just move on with my day because the number of times that Ramirez is 6,200 is going to just murder you. Feels pretty limited against Kopech and then White Sox bullpen.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right call. If Kopech was pushing the ownership that I kind of expected for him on these 2 slates, I think it would make more sense to maybe consider that. On the FanDuel slate, you get a lot of ownership around Ramirez. He's 6.3% at that ridiculously high DK price. So maybe if you find a way to pay that price, maybe that's where you go, like you were saying. 17.6% on FanDuel at 4,100. I just don't need to be there. And for as good as they've been, I don't know that I totally believe in this lineup that's got Miles Straw, Stephen Kwan, Owen Miller, Josh Naylor, Franmil Reyes in it. There's some good players in there, but there's some guys who have some work to prove things to me. Franmil, I love the power, but he's a massive strikeout guy and a flawed hitter. So I don't love this Guardians lineup top to bottom. And if I can't get Jose Ramirez in it, I don't really need to go there. So I think I'm with you on that.
All righty. We got GOAT Jordan Lockhart in the chat. Good to see you, my friend. Also, I know that we generally go a little bit over on this one anyway, but I do have a hard out at 10 after the hours. So 22 minutes. We will have, no. We got plenty of time. We got 5 games, 22 minutes. We've done crazier things in life. Well, let's talk about You Could Be My Jeffrey Springs. See, I just sang Fleetwood Mac. But it's Jeffrey Springs. See, it's a joke. Tampa Bay Rays, 3.6 implied run, 3.9 for the Angels. Jeffrey Springs, 29.8% K percentage, limited sample size, all of, couple starts, but 1.47 expected ERA early going here. He was the guy that I was very curious to see what happens in the top pitchers tool today. Well, it seems like he's not playable because of a pitch count kind of an issue, but he's 4K and a really good real life pitcher. That's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, the at 4K with that strikeout rate, am I totally crazy for thinking maybe we can squeeze a little
I was
bit of
thinking
value
about it. I want
maybe
to.
down
He
the
hasn't
bottom
gone
of the
over
board?
43 pitches this season, but he's
Yeah.
4K and maybe he just fans 5-3 or something.
Yeah, I mean that's what we'd be looking for, is that, you know, that extreme strikeout performance over only a handful of innings. Got out to 3 1/3 his last start, but only threw 31 pitches, was just pitching fairly efficiently, didn't walk anybody, only struck out 2, allowed 2 hits. If he's getting, you know, if they've got like a 50 pitch count on him, do you think that that's playable at that point on DK for 4,000? I think there's enough strikeouts there where maybe it's at least worth a couple shares.
Career 27.1% K percentage. It's not like this is some, flash in the pan here lately.
Yeah, I mean 35.2% over 44 2/3 out of the pen last year. And there is a difference pitching out of the pen and starting, but it's going up against an Angels lineup that's sitting 23rd in baseball with a 25% strikeout rate against righties this year. They're lethal in terms of the power and everything they can do. But I think, if you get that home run against, you're just shot in the foot anyway. So why not just take the shot that he's going to strike out these guys, go through that lineup one time over and find 4 or 5 strikeouts? There are crazier ideas for 4,000. 6,500 on FanDuel, I'm not touching it. But for 4,000 on DK, maybe that's a little interesting.
We will rediscuss, because it just is such a pitch count thing. And there's not the opportunity cost. You either are getting up to the top, or this mid-range, you are taking some real thin shots. We're talking about Paul Blackburn and Michael Pineda, for God's sake. It's something to think about. Noah Syndergaard, though, 14.6% K percentage. That's way down from career numbers, but being a real good life pitcher now, 0.96 whip. He was always a good real life pitcher, but just without the strikeouts now. What do you kind of see in Noah Syndergaard for this time out, considering decent enough top 2 pitcher percentage score on DK, but coming in a little bit overowned?
Yeah, a little bit overowned, but I think, in terms of the raw ownership total, 17.2, that's not that difficult to deal with on DK. It's versus an 11% probability of being a top 2 starter, but we've got Rodon at the top at 31.8, followed by Woodruff, who's well over 25. And then a bunch of guys in that, 17 for Gore down to 10% for Paul Blackburn. There's kind of a tier there where I think Syndergaard's probably the most talented, proven guy on that tier. You can argue about the young, Gore Kopech part of it, maybe Urias in there, but Syndergaard's, for the ownership total that he's actually pulling at 17%, that's half of what Urias is getting. He's cheaper than Urias. So I think there's good reason to go to Syndergaard shares here anyway. The strikeout rate's concerning, 14.6%. I think a lot of that is tied up in the loss of velo. If you look, he went from 2019, he was at 98 mile an hour fastball, 91 mile an hour change with a 7 mile an hour differential in there. And that came down as 94.89 now. So it's only a 5 mile an hour differential, and it's a differential from a much lower starting point. So I think that changeup looks a lot like the fastball. He's probably dealing with a little bit about the release of the change and trying to build a little bit more deception in there. You can see the whiff rate's not where it was in his better years on the changeup. So I think he's struggling a little there. I think that's where some of the strikeout upside went. But to your point, pitching pretty well regardless. 0.96 whip, 4.26 xFIP behind the scenes, 11.6% swinging strike rate, still very good. 36% hard hit, only a 4% barrel rate, still difficult to hit a home run off of. So I do like some shares of Syndergaard here. I think the prices on DK is probably appropriate, as is the ownership. He's a little high priced at 9K on FanDuel, but that's keeping ownership down at 13%. So I think I'm willing to pay the tax to keep people, if he was 8,522% owned, something like that, I'd like him less. So I think at the higher price on FanDuel, I like him a little bit more.
Tampa Bay, negative leverage to try to stack them up, but you get guys like Brandon Lau. I'm always willing to take a shot on that. 15.7% ownership as it stands, though, right now. Just seems like a team that overall is going to be a little bit overowned. Anything you're noticing specifically for them in Anaheim tonight?
No, they're fine. I'd like to be there. I'd certainly like to have some shares of Brandon Lau when I can get to them, but he's 24% owned on FanDuel at 3,300. He's just too cheap over there. 4,400 is probably too cheap on DK, 16% owned. You can maybe get away with some one-off shares there. I don't love the ownership on him on the FanDuel slate. Randy Rosarena in the middle of that lineup, also pulling 13.9%. And then it's a lot of, semi-good hitters, flawed hitters throughout there. I'm not including Wander Franco in that, obviously. He's fantastic, 3,800, 5,300 across the two sites. Maybe I can get to some Wander Franco under 10% owned, but I believe more in the Syndergaard side of this one, I think. And if you're looking at the numbers against right-handed pitching, a 146 collective ISO, 15% better than average creating runs, but a 24.2% strikeout rate, 2.62% home run rate. I don't know that I need to get overwhelmingly into the Rays side of things here when there's that much ownership on the key hitters that I want.
All right. And in terms of bats from Angels, come on. I mean, it's a team that's going to be having positive leverage. If you can get to them, you play them when there's any positive leverage, even against lovely Jeffrey Springs, who's really good at real life pitching. But if he's only going to go 3 or 4 innings, that gives you 5 innings of non-Jeffrey Springs baseball. That's fun. What sticks out to you on the Angels side? Because it seems like Ohtani, Trout, Ward are pretty good at this.
Yeah, you'd think that Ohtani, Trout, and Ward are a pretty good combo. You're looking at a 243 WRC plus, a 210, and then Shohei Ohtani, last year's MVP, sitting at just 101, only 1% better than average so far creating runs. Feel like he'll probably come around. If you're putting those 3 hitters together, more power to you at those prices, but I love that, all single-digit ownership. On FanDuel, they're a lot cheaper, a lot more highly owned, but I think they're worth getting to. Rendon, Jared Walsh, Max Stassi, I call out a lot of the time, especially where you need a catcher, but as a differentiation point on FanDuel where you don't need a catcher, a little bit of sneaky power if he's hitting in that 6 spot. Didn't exactly work out for us the other day, but I think I'm willing to go back to it. I don't love the bottom of the lineup with Mayfield, Fletcher, Velasquez. So depends on who's there. If you get Wade instead of one of those players, you can maybe stick him in for stolen bases.
All right. Well, before we go into the speed round, we got to talk Marlins Diamondbacks big time. But we're going to talk Prize Picks here quickly because Prize Picks, the sponsor, not just of this show, the strategy show, but of many shows here on the Awesemo podcast or YouTube network, if you shall. Prize Picks, daily prop contests, 2, 3, 4, or 5 player lineups. So you can up to 10x your entry fee. You can just play any sport you want to. MLB, we've got NBA stuff, obviously, NHL, esports. They've got cricket from time to time, lacrosse, crazy stuff that they'll offer sometimes from time to time. Be on the lookout there. They run so many great promotions, giving you opportunities for like the Taco Tuesday stuff, seeing some valued plays. Check out Prize Picks. It's a really fun site. I've enjoyed playing over there, and I think you will too. Use promo code Awesemo to get $100 first match deposit bonus. Plus, download it over at the App Store, Google Play, or just go to prizepicks.com. Plus, you'll get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up for the first time over at Prize Picks. So deposit using that $100 first match deposit bonus using promo code Awesemo. But then you will also get that free month for everything we offer behind the paywall. It's a great site, super easy to navigate. Awesemo's got it up there on the screen. Soccer, CSGO, tennis, Jai-Alai. I've never really realized how to say that. JLA, Jai-Alai, one of the two. Highlight. There it is. Found it. Thanks, buddy. Glad he's here. Stop guessing, start winning. Join us here at Awesemo Plus, but do it through this Prize Picks promotion. Thank you so much to them for their sponsorship of the strategy show. Going to be good times. Oh, and just take the over on every Milwaukee pitcher from now until the end of time on their K props. It just seems to be just cashing at a ridiculous rate. But let's keep it going, my friend. We've got Miami. We've got Arizona. I need help because, my God, do they value out phenomenally today. It's a 9 total on the board, which is significantly higher than anything else. A run and a half higher, even if you will. That's because both pitchers are not great. Elieser Hernandez, 467 expected slugging this season. Humberto Castellanos, 317 expected slugging. Has been good from a real life perspective, 14.5% K percentage, but we're not going to roster either of these guys, right?
Oh, I could take some shares of Elieser Hernandez.
Oh, look at you. Look at you.
Oh, yeah. 21.1% strikeout rate so far this season, 23.6% last year, 4.32 xFIP last year. I think there's some talent there. He's not great. He's certainly mediocre, but at 6,900 going up against this Diamondbacks lineup, I can get to some shares of Elieser Hernandez with nobody else going there. Humberto Castellanos on the other side, no thank you. He's the reason the Marlins are at the top of the stacks board. Just a not overly talented pitcher, 4.88 xFIP, a 6.2% swinging strike rate so far this year. That is not good. 14.5% strikeouts. The hard hit and the barrel rate are fine, but there's no real reason to believe in Humberto. I would go to some Marlin stacks if you can figure out how to put them together in low-owned combinations. They're just getting a tremendous amount of ownership, negatively leveraged on both sites, I believe. So difficult to get to Marlin's bats. So it would be, I think, entirely Marlins on this. I might take out a few shares of Diamondbacks if I get to an extended amount of Eliezer Hernandez, but really it would be Marlins bats and Eliezer Hernandez from this game for me.
Yeah. All right. That's fair. Favorite Marlins bat to get to?
It's Jazz Chisholm pretty much any day, but he's 32% owned for 3,700, which is a broken price on FanDuel, 23% at 54 on DK. So let me throw Jorge Soler into that mix. I love Jorge Soler's power on any given slate. Struggling to a 171, 275, 333 so far this year, 4 home runs, but I think that power bat will come around. So maybe you grab him in there.
And favorite bat from the Arizona side, a team that's going to get stacked up too much today?
Probably Dalton Varsho up at the top there, but again, coming in 30% owned, lefty back going up against Eliezer here. Certainly like that. Christian Walker's been heating up a little bit. It would probably be one of those two guys, but there's some ownership around it. All
right. Well, that game is actually pretty easy to break down. Sometimes when it's just like, oh, well, they're going to be overowned offenses and they're going to be bad pitchers, but I get the Hernandez call. I'm actually okay taking some shots. I just added him back to my pool. Nothing like changing your player pool at 9 a.m. Good times. Philadelphia Phillies. Oh God. Yeah, what a time to be alive. Ranger Suarez. Want to talk about the regression bug. Hello. Hi. Good to see you. Regression. Ranger Suarez for the season, 14% K percentage, 519 expected slugging, limiting some of the hard contact, but for the most part, nowhere near the pitcher that he was in 2021. I don't think we ever really anticipated that being long-term what he was going to be, but even this is a pretty marked decrease in everything across the board for Ranger Suarez. A lefty going up against San Diego here in this spot. What are you planning to do? Or sorry, against Seattle up north, decent enough pitching ballpark, but what are we planning to do with Ranger Suarez, if anything?
I certainly wouldn't touch him on the DK slate unless you're a little masochistic. 9,100 with all the reactionary pricing that's been going on. How is he still sitting at 9,100 with a 14% strikeout rate, a 4.59 xFIP, of a 9.3% walk rate? I mean, yeah, he's been pitching poorly this season. 7,700 is at least probably the correct price, maybe even a little high on the FanDuel slate. I just don't believe really in the pitcher. I didn't really believe what we were seeing last year was real. And I think that this year is probably extreme. He's probably somewhere in the middle, but I don't need to get there. I don't need to try and prove anything with what I think is a good Mariners lineup going against him. Seattle's active roster so far this season, a 161 ISO against lefties, creating runs 9% better than average, 3.05% home run rate, only strike out 21.4% of the time, which is 11th best in baseball. So I'd prefer to be on the Mariners side of this one.
Yep, 109 WRC plus against lefties, 20.7% K percentage. So they're actually making some contact. They're creating some runs and a 669 OPS. It's all right. 152 ISO. It's all right. But we get guys from the right side, you know, kind of who they're going to be. You're going to get to Toro and Ho. And Eugenio Suarez seems good. So Suarez on Suarez crime incoming today. That's fun to say. Let's talk about Chris flexing. He stays flexing in his candy paint. That's Mike Jones. You probably don't get that one, but that's okay. 14.8% K percentage. That's actually a good thing that you probably don't, because that's like early 90s rap or early 2000s rap that was just not that good. But
yeah, wrong genre. I was never all that into the rap and hip hop scene.
I get it.
I know it around the edges, like frat parties and stuff like that, when it was just playing and, you know, all the different 90s rap songs. So I know a lot of those, but it was never like the go-to on my iPod. And I know I'm chewing up the time that you need.
Oh no, stop it. G Unit. I love my G Unit. I love my Ludacris. This was on me, Terry. If I do the segue, it's my fault.
And I consider that a flaw, honestly, and a hole in like my pop culture knowledge that I wish I had closed up back then. Cause like there's just this gaping hole in my pop culture knowledge around that. And it's such good music too, that it's like, you know, there was no good reason to not be listening to it. I just did not happen to.
We're not wrestling Chris flexing, right?
Probably not. I know I threw him into the mix before when I was running down pitchers, but yeah, even 5,300 on DK, it's a little concerning. 14.8% strikeout rate last year, 16.9% over 179 and 2/3. Just kind of mediocre, not really even a really all that good real life pitcher. So yeah, I'm going to unwind what I said earlier. I don't really need the Chris Flexen shares. It was just by comparison to whoever we were talking about before. I'd rather be on the Philly side of that one.
I'm going to be on the Philly side of this one. There's some lefties that are pretty good. I've heard of them. Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper. They seem all right. You get some other righties. Alec Boehm hits the ball hard. Nick Castellanos hits the ball hard. Reese Hoskins hits the ball hard. I mean, I like the Phillies. They might be my favorite contrarian stack of the day. How about you?
Yeah, it's a great spot to go. I'm actually surprised the ownership is as low as it is. Everybody in the low single digits on DK, getting a couple guys like Harper into the teens on FanDuel, but it's not at all concerning. You can absolutely go there, 1 through 7. If you get the Odubel, Bryson Stott version of the lineup that's projected, maybe the back end is a little weak, but 1 through 7 is common and strong. It's their usual lineup.
And we talked about the Seattle side. Just kind of recap for everybody why they're such good plays against Suarez.
Yeah, I just think there's plenty of really strong right-handed hitting. You mentioned Eugenio Suarez. I would throw Ty France into that mix. He's been scorching to start the season, 319, 385, 474, 5 home runs so far this year. You can get to bats like Jesse Winker, even from the left side of the plate, Adam Frazier. Luis Torrens, ton of power from the right side of the plate as a catcher, maybe a little bit sneaky there. Julio Rodriguez, the rookie at the back end of the lineup, just 1 through 9. I think that Mariners lineup plays and is pretty good.
All righty, let's keep it on going, my friend. We've got 2 games to round it out. Smash the like button for Terry McBride, giving you the analysis and me just existing in the world. Chicago Cubs, 3.1 implied total. San Diego Padres, 3.9. Kyle Hendricks, Mackenzie Gore. I got to say, Mackenzie Gore, 25.9% K percentages. Not what I saw coming for Mackenzie Gore, but this is lovely. Seems to be a guy that if you're not going to play Rodon, if you're not going to play Urias on the DraftKings slate and Brandon Woodruff for sure on this DraftKings slate, you might land on some Gore at 9,700 to get a little bit different. How do you feel about him as a starting pitcher up against this Cubs team that likes to swing and they like to miss?
I think it's a good spot. Premium prospects. I am not all that surprised by, coming out of the gate with a 25.9% strikeout rate, maybe a little surprising, but I think he's a good pitcher. And I think he's going to actually bring that walk rate down a little bit as the season goes on, boost the swinging strikes a little bit as the season goes on, hopefully clean up a little bit of the hard hit. You do get a little bit of concern about the, lack of missing bats despite the strong strikeout rate there, and a little bit of concern around that hard hit that he's allowed. If he's missing bats, we're going to be fine here. If he's pitching to some contact with some hitters in the middle of that lineup, like a Pat Wisdom going up against lefty righty, ton of power there. So maybe it's a spot where we're taking a little bit of Cubs shares anyway. They're very low owned, but I do like the spot here for Gore. 9,700, 17% owned on DK is easy enough to get to. 10,000. We're pushing it a little, but the pitching slate on FanDuel is pretty thin. So I think 17% ownership is probably pretty appropriate over there. I might get a little under that and distribute shares into less comfortable places, but I think he's one of the better pitching spots on this slate, and he ranks out that way in our top pitchers tool.
Kyle Hendricks, please just tell me no.
No.
Thank you. That's all I needed. So we're going to roster some Padres. That's cool. Let's talk about our favorite Padres because I don't have a lot from the Cubs. If you want to play Suzuki, have fun. If you want to play some Patrick Wisdom, who's day-to-day, if he's going to play today, have fun, pay attention. But I really have nothing from the Cubs.
Yeah, not a lot. I mean, Wilson Contreras is an any day kind of a player on DK where you need catchers. Suzuki's fine. Everybody knows I like Ian Happ a lot. He's not that highly owned, so you could go there. I would like this lineup better with Patrick Wisdom in it. If you see no Wisdom, that might incline me to roster a few more Gore shares. On the Padres side of things, it's not a lineup that I love in general. Manny Machado, terrific player. Eric Hosmer out to a ridiculously hot start, but he's not as good as he's been. Jerickson Profar, Trent Grisham. I don't love this team up and down with no Fernando Tatis. I've said it a bunch this year, but I think going up against Kyle Hendricks, there's every good reason in the world to get there. They're going to have a lot of contact today. It's just a matter of if they're hitting atom balls or if they're dropping in for them.
All right. One game to go. And this is kind of important. We have the Colorado Rockies with a, get this, 2.4 implied team run total. I remember a 1.9 with DeGrom last season. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen, but 2.4 is up there with pretty insane against the Giants with a 4.1, which seems pretty large total going up against Austin Gomber, who keeps the ground balls in play here. But he's had a 4.29 expected ERA, 1.23 whip, but considering he's a lefty going up against this team, the San Francisco team, I think I have some interest on even in the Austin Gomber side. How about you, Terry?
Yeah, I think we'll start with the Gomber side of things. You mentioned the ground balls. The strikeouts are reasonably effective. He's sitting at a 23.4 this year. Last year, over 115 and a 30 is 23.2. He's probably more like the 4.17 xFIP pitcher that he was last year, but he's at a 3.2 so far this year. Been good for contact. I like taking shares of him at 66 on DK and under 10% owned. He's 8,900 on FanDuel, which is an uncomfortable price for Austin Gomber, but I think it's worth getting to because he's only 2.7% owned. San Francisco against lefties this year is middle of the road in everything except for home run rate. 3.48% home run rate is 6th in baseball, but only creating runs 1% better than average, 14th in baseball with a 22.4% strikeout rate, 12th in baseball with a 162 ISO against lefties. So I think there's enough there for Austin Gomber to have an effective game. The pitcher I'm much more interested in is the guy that we've talked about a lot through the show, Carlos Rodon on the other side of it. The interesting wrinkle with that, of course, is if you're looking at team splits so far this year, the Rockies 16.2% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching is the best mark against either hand in all of baseball. That's surprising. 28% better than average creating runs against lefties this year, 4th overall in baseball. Only a 1.92% home run rate is 23rd. Not a ton of power from them, but they've just been sequencing. They've been not striking out, putting the ball in play against lefties. Carlos Rodon is better than every lefty they've faced. I don't know who they've faced, but I'm confident in saying that. 36.9% strikeout rate, 2.70 xFIP, 0.83 whip, 14.2% induced swinging strikes. Play Carlos Rodon wherever you can. I'll probably be below the field just because the field is around 50%. And I do have other offset spots and he's super expensive, but he's the best pitcher on this slate.
I think they faced Kershaw opening day. That'd be about it. But even still, I think it was in Coors, I believe.
Okay, that's a little trick. Yeah, you're right. They did face Kershaw opening day.
Opening day, I think. Right. But it's just in my brain. It's just one of those things.
He's
but you know
right
what?
There with any lefty they've faced.
I love Carlos Rodon. There's not a chance in God's green earth that I'm going to roster a Colorado Rockies bat today.
Above or below the field on Rodon for you?
Below.
Or at the field? Below.
Below on FanDuel. On FanDuel, below. He's going to be like 45-50% owned. I'm going to be below. On DK, I don't know yet.
Maybe.
On DK, I don't know yet because it really just depends on when the lineups start coming out. And as I'm building lineups, it's kind of a feel thing combined with a data thing where you can kind of look at your lineups and be like, this is too much Rodon because it's limiting certain bats. But I'm imagining at 10K, he's the priority over Gore, Kopech, everybody else, Brandon Woodruff. And it shouldn't be that cost prohibitive to get to him. So maybe over on DK, under on FanDuel.
I like that. I think that makes sense. And on FanDuel, I'm planning on coming in below the field, but I'll still be 35%, I think, somewhere.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
That's the kind of undercut I'm talking about.
Because he could put up 60, but if somebody puts up 50 and you have the opportunity to save 1,900 and get those bats, that's when you're partying. Like that's pants off. That's pants off stuff.
Yep. That's exactly
San Francisco has a 4.1 implied total. Explain that to me.
I'm not really sure where that's coming from. Like I said, the run creation has been kind of mediocre in terms of against left-handed pitching here, just 1% above average. The home runs are there, so maybe everybody's just kind of overreacting to the home run potential from this team. You get like a Wilmer Flores from the right side of the plate, specializes at hitting home runs against lefties. Darren Ruff, certainly a little bit of power in that lineup. It's not the greatest lineup in the world, though. I mean, they're the Giants. They do weird things where they never seem to have a great lineup and they always seem to perform. So I hate taking pitchers against them in general, but I think that's an unreasonably high total, and I think it's a decent spot for Gomber.
My God, Terry, we did the thing. 2 minutes over. I mean, it's across the street. I got to go to the gym, and they charge you if you're late. So it's like stupid, but man. Whatever.
You go to some real like hardcore, just authoritarian kind of gym here, man.
Let's go. I'm about to throw some heavy things. It's gonna be fun. Let's ride. That's Terry McBride. He's the man. We got Mike Awesemo. Thank you so much for producing. Great work as always. Don't forget to check out all the content we have coming up later in the day. We got it's going to be the Lofty and Josh NBA Live Before Lock. You want to check that out. Greg and Adam leading that up for NBA Deeper Dive. And of course, I'll be back with Neil talking this. Any final words for the people, Terry? Any final words for the people?
I think we can just say we've been a couple of average white guys and we're out of here.
That was perfectly said. I'm leaving. Goodbye. Context, it matters.